So this is another round of Excel skills that are very useful in conducting research in the social sciences using Excel. We're going to continue talking about skills that might be useful in doing what we would call data wrangling, which is sort of getting data to go from the format that we find it out there in the world, whether it's a PDF file that we're able to copy and paste stuff in off of, or something that we download off the internet that's in theory nicely arranged in tables. Oftentimes in practice, when we try to import that information in, it doesn't show up the way that it should or we think it should. Things can be messy, and we just have to deal with that and find ways to sort of parse it out and make it look the way that we need it to look. And so we'll talk about today a couple skills that I think are really handy relating to filtering and sorting. These are fairly basic things, but again, if you don't have these, you're missing out significantly in some of the powerful tools that Excel has to offer. So I'll just start with this demo data that I've been highlighting. This is sort of made up fictitious data. These are not real people. These are not real addresses. I'll just sort of throw that out there, but we'll treat it as though it is. And I've got a set of titles or headers across the top, which label what each variable is. And sometimes I don't want to look at all of my data, either because it's too messy or because I'm not interested in it. I need just to look at a sort of a subset of it. And whenever we're interested in extracting sort of just a subset of our data, the tool that is most helpful is going to be the filter tool. And so oftentimes we start over here in the home part of the ribbon, but if we sort of go over, we find that there's that data tab, and the data ribbon has both the sort tool that we'll be talking about as well as the filter tool that we'll be using right now. And so I'm just going to select everything, the entire worksheet, by clicking up there in that little triangle, and just to tell Excel I'm interested in this whole thing, and we're going to click filter. And what filter does is it adds these little drop down arrows at the top. And the drop-down arrows give you a list of all of the unique values in that column. So in this particular case, we're looking at names, and there's 100 cases, and so we have 100 unique values. And the fact that each of those is sort of clicked on and included in our analysis isn't all that handy. But sometimes we have categories. So with under title, I have two titles that I'm using. I have Miss and Mr., which in theory would correspond to gender. So in theory, I have a way of separating out the men from the women in this data set by choosing only to look at people who have the title Mr., of which there are, just a handful, about 20 or so. Or I could look at just the folks who are women, and there's a considerable group more of them. But again, it hides everything that doesn't have that amount that I'm choosing to work with. Now, they're not gone, they're just hidden. And so even if we look over at the rows here, we see that the rows have turned blue, and they don't always go in order. So here it jumps from 7 to 11. That's because, and if you look closely, there's sort of like a little gap there. That's where it's hidden away those 3 or so other records, and we can get them back either by taking the filter off or by clicking up here, because it's showing that we are filtering something by clicking the select all or just clicking the Mr. on, and then cases are back and the numbers on the side are black as well, indicating that we're not hiding anything, that the filter is not active. All right, so this could be a handy tool if you were looking to just get a subset of your data. There's other ways that you can do a filter. So there's number filters, where you could look for if there's a specific number value, or if you want everything that's above. So I had ages, and I want everybody who's of retirement age, everybody above 65. Like I could filter just for that. I wouldn't have to go through and click all of the different unique values for 65 through 100 something, right? So there's kind of handy ways that you can use that filtering tool to drill down to a subset of your data. There's also a sorting tool, and that ends up being really handy when you want things to be kind of grouped together, right? So maybe I don't like it that my states are all kind of, all over the place. Maybe I want my states sort of grouped in a way that they're kind of connected together. And I could do a sort on just states. Now, in my sort of ideal world, I'll probably just sort of carefully select everything over here. I turn filter off just because you don't need to, but I'm choosing to. And I'm going to click the sort box. I'm going to do the big one. And that brings up this dialog box in which it asks a couple questions. It says, so do you have headers across the top of your data? If you don't click that, it will try to treat that top row as if it's part of your data and sort it as well. But in this case, my data does have headers. The other nice thing about using the header option is that it uses the labels to help identify. So you don't have to know that state is in column H. You can just go through and find your state variable. And I'm going to sort on the values versus grouping things together based on some sort of color scheme or something else. And then I can choose my order. A to Z is usually the default. And if I wanted to add additional stuff, if I wanted my cities to also be sorted in alphabetical order after that, I could do that as well. And just sort of the order that you put these in is sort of how it will sort them through. And so actually, I can't remember if I want to do city first and then state, or state first, then city. I think I probably should do city, which will put all my cities in alphabetical order, and then go through and say, all right, now put everything together alphabetically that's based on state. So let's try that and see what happens. And it didn't do what I wanted. It put them in order based on city, and then alphabetized within cities by state. But of course, there's not a lot of duplicates. So let's try that again. Let's do sort. And this time we're going to do sort by state, and then within each state, sort by city, and click OK. And that looks like we might expect. We have our Arizona first, and we have a couple from California, and they're organized in alphabetical order. So sort feature, kind of handy. I will say that I am personally quite paranoid about the sort feature. I have screwed up data in the past using the sort feature, and I want to show you how you do screw it up and the safety mechanisms that are in place to make sure that you don't. So my greatest fear is that I'm going to go and I'm going to select my data, and I'm going to miss one. Actually, it's more common when I pick it at the bottom, I'm scrolling up, and for whatever reason, I don't scroll all the way to the top. And then when I go to sort, Excel will handily say, hey, hold on a second. It looks like there's more data here that you might want to be working with. Did you really mean to sort just a subset of that you missed some? So that's sort of safety mechanism number one. And if I choose continue with the current selection, those cases that I missed are never going to be sorted. And maybe that's fine. Maybe I can sort them later. But if you're working with more than one column of data, that's a really dangerous option to click. And I'll try to show you why. So note that Georgetown, South Carolina is the bottom case here. And when I click sort, it's giving me my data, sorted. It sorted all of this in alphabetical order. But because I told it to only sort what I had selected, it didn't bother moving the states around at all. So these states are still in the exact same order, and there is no West Orange, South Carolina. It doesn't exist. I've screwed up my data thoroughly. That's a problem. So I'm going to Control Z and undo that. Better yet would be for me to click sort, and when it prompts me to expand my selection, I expand my selection. And now I can sort, and my data has headers, and I can sort based on state or city. And it sorts not just the city, but also the other stuff that was selected as well, the state. But if you're paying very close attention, you'll note that the zip code column didn't move at all, because when I simply click sort and I expand the selection, it doesn't pick up zip code. So this is one of the reasons why I always oftentimes use the little arrow up here to select the entire worksheet anytime I want to do a sort or anytime I want to do a filter. So I don't accidentally find myself in a situation where I missed a column because Excel saw that there was blank space and didn't think that things were supposed to be connected. So that's one sort of behavioral way that you can protect yourself from making a mistake. Always select the entire worksheet. But maybe we don't want to select the entire worksheet. Maybe in doing that, we're moving other stuff around that we don't want to move around. Maybe we really just want to be working within this specific table. And if that's the case, I would recommend declaring this information to be a table. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the table. I'm going to select all the information I want. I've got a blank column here, and that's okay. And I'm going to go to insert, and there's this option table. And you can do Control T, which is the hotkey for it, but I never remember that. And so I just go to the insert ribbon and select table. And Excel will say, okay, where do you want to create your table? And you can either highlight it there, or you can use what's already currently highlighted. We're going to tell it that the table has headers. That's an important thing because, again, then it will show up and use that in its information. And I click OK. And Excel kind of gets aggressive with my table. It kind of reformats it, makes it look a little bit different. I can change that if I want and use a different sort of layout. But what Excel is trying to communicate very strongly to me is that this information has been organized together and declared to be sort of a coherent thing. And so if I sort within this table, it's going to sort everything within the table. But it also added in filtering, almost just like automatic. It assumes that we're going to be wanting to work with this table. And if I click in here, sure enough, I've got all my city names. That isn't all that useful. But if I wanted to have just my cases from California, I can do that. If I wanted to select everything with a zip code greater than 5,000 or something, I could do. I don't know why that would be a thing that we would do, but we could. But there's also, with the filter, there is a sort option. And so you can sort within this table and sort A to Z, and it takes care of it. But it's, I think, useful to note, I didn't select anything and say, hey, keep all this together and make sure that you do that. By declaring it as a table, Excel knows that anytime you sort, you have to move all that other information with it. And so declaring something as a table is probably the best way to make sure that you're not screwing things up accidentally with your sorts. And as I've said, I've done this enough times that it's something I live in fear of. And there are two ways to kind of fix it. One is to declare things as a table to avoid that problem. The other is to select the entire worksheet. Both work, but there are advantages to working with tables that we could talk about later.